Welcome to Islam Has a Right to Know. My name is Dickie. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And what we have found in looking at the history in the Bible, we find the Arab people, which later became Muslims, are in the Bible throughout, from the beginning chapters and books to the end. And we just felt impressed that Islam has a right to know, rather than listen to Christian viewpoints that have no basis in the Bible, that talk about that Islam is orchestrated by the devil, that Muhammad was a prophet of Satan. These are not true at all, because Islam is in the Bible. The Arab people are in the Bible. The prophet Muhammad is specifically mentioned in Revelation chapter 9. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in its early years before it became the name Seventh-day Adventist, came to an understanding of a prophecy in Revelation 9 that had the story of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, and the green arrows show that prophecy on this early chart, which we refer to as the 1843 chart. And the red arrows here on a chart that was started or made after the Seventh-day Adventist Church started in 1850. The interesting thing, the pioneers of our denomination were so impressed with what was going on in the Arab world. 1/3 of this chart was made up of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, which included basically all of Arabia and much of North Africa. And we felt that Islam has a right to know this from the Bible, rather than just somebody telling a theology of what somebody thinks. Because much of the studies we've done so far are in the Old Testament, and we're going to continue there, because this is the books that Moses wrote, the prophet Moses wrote. And as we go on, this is a chart that I made myself personally with the leading of God, I believe, in Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan. The blue line, I found that in a book called Bible Readings for the Home Circle. It had Muhammad's name on it. It had his birth, had his death, and the things that went on and transpired in the Muslim world. No one knew this. I didn't know this until I started to research. One of the interesting things when you do research, you have no idea what you'll find. You read thousands of pages with wondering what was in there for me. Some things I read, I just realized they're worthless. Other things I read, I believed and realized they were fundamental understandings that any Christian needed to know who claimed to be a Bible believer, as well as the Muslim world or the Arab people. They needed to know that. This blue line is significant. Here, Muhammad's name, his birth and death, is written in a Christian book in 1911. Jacob was the son of Isaac. And it says, and Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. Remember, the land of Canaan was specifically mentioned by Allah in Genesis chapter 17, that this was going to be where the children of Israel were going to be at. This was their home country, given to them by Allah. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock of his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilead and with the sons of Zilpad, his father's wives. Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Joseph was carrying on what was going on out there with the other brothers, also by other wives. Verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph. Israel was the same name as we call Jacob here. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children, because he was the son of his age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and he could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told his brethren, and they hated him yet more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obedience to my sheaf. The older brothers didn't like what happened here at all. They made a covenant right then that this young kid who is from our father's other wife, we don't like him. Verse 8, And his brethren said unto him, Shall thou indeed reign over us? Or shall thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him, yet the more for his dreams and for his words. He dreamed yet another dream, told his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obedience to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come bow down ourselves before thee to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. And his brethren went to feed the father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, Here am I. And he said to him, Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, behold, he was wandering in the field. He was wandering there looking for his family members. He was wandering the field, and the man asked him, says, What seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed from here, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him or to kill him. The brothers here were so angry. Now remember, in our previous programs, we showed in Judges chapter 6 from the writings of Moses in the Old Testament that the Arab people, they came as locusts, as a multitude. And God turned Israel over to the children of the east. And going on with verse 19, And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us kill him, and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some vile beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And as Reuben heard it, he delivered them out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid himself from their hands, to deliver him to his father again. So Reuben was willing to risk the brothers' anger at him to go back and to deliver Joseph. But let's see what happened in the rest of the story. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty, and there was no water in it at all. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spice, balm, myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. My Muslim brothers and sisters, the history of the Arab people has always been traitors. It comes from the earliest times. The Ishmaelites were running caravans at that time, carrying things down that they could sell to the Egyptians, and they were coming by at this time. In verse 26 it says, And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content. So the rest of the family were willing to do what Reuben wanted. But now let's read on. Let's see what happened. Then there passed by Midianite merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Now, consider this. The Midianites were from Abraham's third family, with Keturah being the mother. Ishmaelites were from Abraham's first family, with Hagar being the mother. What we find as we studied the Bible, we found that the Arab people became traitors. And they also amalgamated or came together, the different families. And so the Ishmaelites and Midianites, they were one of the same, you might say, but yet they never lost their distinctiveness, so the names were always carried on in the Bible. But here they were almost together, going together on their way to Egypt. And so they took Joseph and they brought him to Egypt. Verse 29, it says, And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. He rent his clothes, and he returned to his brother and said, The child is not, and where shall I go? Reuben was looking for him. And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in blood. Probably they sent the coat of many colors. They brought it to their father and said, This have we found. Now know whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it. And he said, It is the son's coat. An evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned his son for many days. And all his sons and all the daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, For I will go down into the grave unto my son's mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt, into Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh's guard. Now, keep in mind, this is important, that here, your side of the family, the Ishmaelites and Midianites, or the Arab people, they were used by God again in a positive way. So God used your side of the family to deliver one of the sons of the other side of the family. It's very important. According to popular history, your side of the family and the Jewish side of the family were always at war. They're always fighting one another. But I suggest the reason the Arab families were doing what they were doing was because Allah called them for this work and called them to deliver. Because remember, the covenant was given in Deuteronomy that your side of the family, the Arab side, was given a double portion which had all the wealth of the world in it, and they got a double portion, and they were also the strength of Abraham. That side of the family, your side of the family, had the strength and the power to contend with the Jewish brethren and to obey what God wanted, and he had them take Joseph to Egypt safely. No one harmed him. That was the plan. Allah used your side of the family for a very important point. And that needs to be kept in mind all the way down through history. Now as we continue, we go to Exodus chapter 2, verse 1. This is like 300 years or so are here in this time frame or more. And we now have Moses. In fact, the Moses who wrote these first 5 books of the Old Testament. Moses was a young baby. The Pharaoh was concerned because the Jewish boys and girls were becoming so many and so populous in Egypt that there was more Jews there than Egyptians. And Pharaoh was worried that the Jews were going to have an uprising and take over his nation. So he decreed that all the young Hebrews were going to be murdered or going to be killed. And so that's the narrative as we take over here and we start to read. And there went a man out of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw that it was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, dabbed it with slime and pitch, and put the child therein. She laid it in the flags or by the bulrushes on the river's bank. There she made this basket out of the bulrushes, and that's how Moses spent the first 3 months of his life. And he was watched over by his sister Miriam. Verse 4, and his sister stood afar off, to wit, what to be done with him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. Her maidens walked along the river's edge, and when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the baby cried. And she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the Hebrew children. Because she knew what her father had done, who was Pharaoh, of wanting to kill all these Hebrew children. Then said his sister, this is Miriam, or Moses' sister, to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll give it thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew. And she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water. I want you to think of this story, of what's happening, what we just read. Number one, Moses' mother was an honest woman. She could have raised him up for all these years and tried to run away and hide with him and keep him. But she obviously had been praying and felt she should do what the Pharaoh's daughter had asked, so that the rest of the family would be spared. She also named him Moses because he drew him out of the water. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was growing, they went out unto his brethren and looked on their burden, and he spied a Hebrew, smiting an Egyptian, smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. He looked this way, and he looked that way. And when he saw that there was no man, Moses slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said unto him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known. And now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs in their father's flock. Now, this is the Arabian Peninsula. This is up north where I put this red dot. This is not exactly, because no one knows exactly what these countries were 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. But we're pretty sure this is the area of what the Midianites took over. This was their area. And this is where Moses fled, because he fled from Egypt, away from Pharaoh. And he fled over here, and we find him by a flock of sheep. Verse 17 tells us the rest of the story. And the shepherds came and drove him away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How is it that you are come so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered our flock." And he said unto his daughters, "Where is he? Why is it that ye have left this man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. Very important point. Reuel here is the father of these daughters, also of Moses' father-in-law. Moses now had left, you might say. He had returned to Egypt, and now he had delivered Israelite through the Red Sea and so forth. And now Reuel, his father-in-law, is coming to visit him. And this is very interesting because I have this verse up here to show that even though the Jewish people had their own faith, that Moses accepted Jethro to eat bread with him and to worship with them. I'll read the verse. And Jethro, Reuel, two names for the same person, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, Allah, and Aaron came and the elders of the Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law. And so this is important, is that Reuel was of the same spiritual faith as what Moses was. The religions were the same at this point in time. They were the same. Now, this here is four different verses in Numbers and also back in Genesis. As Moses was leading the children of Israel to the promised land, they came up to the promised land and they looked, and there was giants in the land and so forth. So Moses asked for volunteers, 2 people from each tribe, to go into the country to spy it out and to bring back a report. And it's very interesting of who the people were that went to spy out this promised land that they looked at, and who was who, and who represented who. We look here in Numbers chapter 13, verse 6 and 8. Of the tribe of Judah, Caleb, the son of Jehonathan. Now Jehonathan was a family member of one of the areas of the country that God gave to Abram when he gave the promise, you're going to get the land from the Euphrates over to the Nile. He was a Kenizzite. And so Caleb was a Kenizzite, and he was grafted into the tribe of Judah. He wasn't a Jew, but he was accepted in full bearing as an adopted son, and he was an adopted son of Judah. This is significant because the other side of the family worked with the Jewish side when needed and when God arranged it. And we read in verse 8, of the tribe of Ephraim, Osha, or Joshua, as we later find out, the son of Nun, was one of the other spies. There was 2 faithful spies and 10 unfaithful spies. And Joshua, the son of Nun, and Caleb, the son of Jehonathan, which were of them that searched the land, they rent their clothes. But all the congregation bade stone them, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle, the congregation, before all the children of Israel. The point being here, 10 Jews said there's giants. We can't take the land. Caleb and Jehonathan were 2 that were willing to go. They knew that they'd been brought this far by Allah, and Allah would not abandon them now. Surely, none of the men that came up out, this is God speaking, because He's punishing, because these men, they didn't believe that God had the power. But Caleb and Joshua did. Let's see what verse 11 says of Numbers chapter 32. Surely, none of the men that came up out of Egypt, from 20 years old and upward, shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, because thou have not fully followed me, except Caleb, the son of Jonathan, the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed me. Remember, these are the verses we read here a few times ago. And this I'll read it again from chapter 15 of Genesis. In the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land from the river of Egypt unto the great river Euphrates, the Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Kadmonites. This is the family name, the area that Caleb came from. He was a Kenizzite, but he was accepted and grafted into the tribe of Judah. My friends, there's no way I'm going to see heaven, not unless I'm grafted in by Allah into the spiritual Jews of the world. Those spiritual Jews, just as you Arabs cannot see heaven unless you're grafted in and be submitted to Allah. You're spiritual Jews, just like I'm not a Jew, but I'll be a spiritual Jew because I believed. Just as you Muslims cannot be Jews. You aren't supposed to be Jews, but you can be spiritual Jews and be submitted to Allah. The Hittites, the Raphamites, Perizzites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites, these were all in this area. In Judges chapter 6, 1 through 6, this is a group of people. This, Judges in chapter 6, verse 1 through 6, has the interesting time. This was the first time that you Arabs were called children of the East. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel, and because the Midianites, the children of Israel, made them dens or in the mountains and caves and strongholds. My friends, it doesn't say that the Midianites were evil. They were just the opposite. God could trust them to bring judgment upon Israel. And this is what the Arab people were to do, because remember, they were given the strength of the firstborn son. My friends, the Bible is so interesting because it doesn't condemn the Arab people. It's just the opposite. It condemns the children of Israel to be taken over for 7 years by Midian, because Midian was going to bring judgment upon these people who were doing evil in the sight of God. I just want to encourage you. That's the Bible of a Christian. That's a Bible that gives justification to the Arab people. That's a Bible that has a story of Ishmael in it, which we'll cover in a few weeks. My friends, my Muslim friends, we believe that the story of Islam and the Arab people in the Bible has never been told correctly to the Arab world. That's why myself and other friends that I have are attempting to do this work, because Islam has a right to know. May Allah bless you completely and fully this next week. Amen.